Did you know that leadership is only ever enacted through communication? So today on the Coaching Podcast, I interview Dr. Erina Reddan. She's a Walkley Award winner, former foreign correspondent, television and radio presenter, author, and communication coach who has built a career at the intersection of storytelling, leadership, and impact. With a PhD in storytelling and a background in crisis communication, Erina focuses on the power of story, leadership in uncertain times, building resilience, and how communication can shift culture and transform outcomes. She's written numerous books. She's one of my best friends. She's in my Warrior Women gang, and I couldn't be more proud of this woman and the support that she's shown me. So before we get into the episode, please remember that this season of the Coaching Podcast is sponsored by TrySam.ai. Finding your perfect coach shouldn't feel like a guessing game. Meet Sam, the AI tool that matches you with a coach who truly gets you, your goals, your values, and your personality all aligned. Discover your perfect match at TrySam.ai.
Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, coaching for success in sport and business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let 'em have it, coach.
G'day, everybody, and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. Well, I know I feel like I should be doing star jumps or something along these lines because I've asked my good friend Erina Reddan to be on the show now for many, many years. We've known each other for over 20 years. We studied coaching together. And of course, she is the owner and founder of redriver.net.au, communications. You've been studying communication all your life, my dear friend Erina. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being on the show and kicking it off with a quote, as I always do. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, by George Bernard Shaw. So I want to know, A, what's your take on that? And also, again, big heartfelt welcome to the show.
Okay, so it is fantastic to be here, partly because right back from when we first met, the energy and the inspiration that you bring to all of us, but particularly me, has been very profound in my life. So thank you. It's great to be here and great to be here with everyone who's part of your tribe. So George Bernard Shaw, we love him because he's actually getting to the real heart of what communication is. He said the biggest problem is that it hasn't taken place because people forget that communication is about connection. It's not just about I'm talking to you. It's about the way it's been heard. And I think people really miss that piece. And that's exactly the first place that I always start. How do you want to be connected?
Well, I love that already. And, I'll never forget the first conversation that we had. And even the year that we met, I was going through a bit of a crisis. I'm going to be vulnerable straight away and let everybody know. I was going through a really rough time in my life in that period. And you were able to give me and help me collaborate on some frameworks, communication frameworks that were pivotal in being able to respond when people were wanting to know what's going on in my life. I had a couple of lines there that I actually would have been lost without them. So not only is there connection when people are going through a tough time, there's also, again, communication is clarity. So I just want to thank you for that. I don't know if I've ever told you that. It was something, it was something along the lines of, explaining the situation in one sentence. Thank you for asking, and I really don't want to talk about it.
See, that's beautiful, isn't it?
Isn't it?
I do think that we are in charge of who we want to be. We want to be leaders in our own lives. I think that people really forget that the whole point of communication is not words. When I start working with people, they generally go, if we're working on some big presentation, there's a lot at stake. They want to change the world. They'll start with, what do they want to say? I want the key takeout to be this. And I always go, that is just words on the page. What meaning do you want to create? And I think it's good to remember what communication actually does in the world. I don't think nothing great happens in the world without communication. So we need to be masters in order to actually create change in the world, the change that we want. It might be a big change or it might be just a change in our own world. And I think the thing that we forget is that communication is meaning. It's incredibly powerful. Without that, you don't get the next job. You don't get your team to do anything. You don't get to create the space that you needed, Emma, in the world to work out what was going on inside you. I do think frameworks are important, but there's a whole lot more stuff that has to happen before you get to that. And I think the thing is, because frameworks around how to kind of deal with content, I think that first of all, we have to have a really important change in our mindset around communication, because leadership is all about, we think, leadership is about how do we actually set a vision and help people enact that vision. If we don't have great communication skills in order to bring people on that journey with us, we don't get anywhere. So I think that's the first thing to get, is that communication is not about performance. It's not about the words you say. It's about the responsibility you take to create meaning. And I think creating meaning is the single most important thing we do as individuals in our lives and as actual, leaders in the world as well. Because only through meaning do people get to live deeper, richer lives and feel more satisfied with what they do.
And buy in as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's
Totally.
a buy-in piece there, because people, I say this all the time in my workshops, people follow people, not because they have to, because they want to.
And that's one of the things I also work on quite a bit, is we think that we're communicating to categories of people. I want all bureaucrats to think this. I want small business owners to do this. Actually, we're not communicating to small business owners, we're communicating to people. Who are they and what's important to them? So it's really, really, really profound work to do, the thinking that you need to do before you get to your words, actually. And I think that the goal of communication, and again, we forget this, is to be valuable. So when we stand on a stage, and I think communication is not just about the big moments, standing on a stage, being in the media, talking to your boss. It's in all the things, and I particularly focus on workplace communication. It's on all those conversations that happen even in the corridor with you as a leader. So the thing that we need to get to is that the question I ask people to ask is, what difference can I make in this conversation? And that takes away so much of the stress that we have inside our bodies, because it's all about, oh my God, communicating in on a stage or in media is very vulnerable, because it goes to the heart of who we are. So we get all caught up in that process when actually it's not about us. Communication principle number one, it's always about them. What difference can I make for them? And that really changes your mindset so that you can actually then sit down and settle your mind down to figure out what is the value that you're going to bring. What difference can I make for them?
And what's coming up for me is, if a leader of a company wants to share their vision, it's almost like they've got to flip that and think about, what difference can I make first before I share the vision? Or correct me if I'm wrong. Did I get that?
No, that's completely correct. What vision, what change does your vision want to make? So, for instance, I was working with somebody just on last week, and he's new to the job. He's been in the job for 6 months, and he's going to have a meeting with all these big directors. And he said, oh, well, let's work on that, because we're in a long-term coaching process. And it was just kind of a thing out of the air. Let's just work on that. But actually, when we did the work, he realized how important it was. This was his moment to create real difference in the workshop, in his workplace. And he had to really think about, what was that difference? And it came down to, I want people to show up at work. I want them to physically be present. I want them to actually talk to each other. So that he then instead of it just being like a quick, oh, let's just do some, some quick thoughts, we actually ended up with a really solid strategy for his whole team and what he wanted to achieve. So communication is the engine for all, I mean, it's the beginning point and it can really help you figure out what you're trying to achieve in the world. What is the meaning? What is the difference you want to make in the world? It all starts with the key questions you ask yourself in a communication process. And you start going, oh yeah, I do. I actually do want. It's not just the words that are coming out of my mouth. I do really want to make a difference. I want to support my people. I want them to achieve more. I want them to feel more satisfied. Okay, so what does that really mean? What's the concrete measures of success that come from that? And then you start from there to create something really beautiful.
Well, it seems only natural then to flow into storytelling. I mean, you have a PhD in storytelling and you've written many books. You really are a unique human in the world, and I can't think of anyone that we've probably had on the show that could be more qualified to talk about, why is story so powerful and what makes a great storyteller?
Okay, so I'm going to take a step back before we get to that, but you are right. I really believe, no, I don't believe, I know the power of story. Partly because when I tell a story with you, our brains sync up. The research shows that our brains start to mirror each other. So they're incredibly powerful. But I want to take a step back to talk about what comes before the story. So I do think that we live in a world in which is quite complex for leaders, because remember, all leadership is enacted through communication. So we now live in a world of communication where it is quite challenging. It's very hard for leaders to get cut through, to connect with people. The world that we live in is where facts can be contested. I mean, I was speaking to a friend of mine the other day, and we feel very differently about the world, very different values. And we were talking about a particular a thing that had happened that was very well known, like it'd been reported. And he said, I can't trust that anymore. I don't trust anything I see in the media. And I said to him, how do we have a conversation then if we have no shared beginnings? And he said, I don't know. And it's, the only the thing that we've got is that we've got the love that goes underneath the facts. But that's the world that leaders are in now. The trust is being eroded. And I think there are three things that leaders do in reaction to that. So the first one is that they actually close down. I don't want to be part of it. It's too toxic. There's too much risk if I show up and communicate. And that's even in their workplaces. So they kind of say, I'll let the work speak for itself. I'm good at my work. Unfortunately, with that, nobody is looking at you. We're all looking at ourselves. So the work never speaks for itself. We have to own the value that we bring to our work. The second one is that leaders can really push through. They can make themselves communicate. But by George, it really costs them. They over-prepare, they overthink, the stress that they have in actually going through the process. So they might get up on the stage, but it'll take several days. It took, several days to prepare, and it'll take several days to recover. So we don't want that for them either. It costs way too much. And then the final thing is that there are leaders who just do it. They know they have to do it and they do it, but they don't realize the power that they can bring, how much more impact, how they could save themselves a lot of time and a lot of stress and make a lot more impact in the workplace if they become masters of communication. And when I say masters of communication, it's a leadership practice. It's as important as what is the revenue? How am I going to get more customers through the doors? It is an enabler of everything. It's the platform that you begin with. So looking at those three problems, we do then move forward to how do we solve these problems? And I think that there's a lot of people in the communication world who do teach one aspect of communication, such as find my voice. What's my authentic style? How do I manage a room when I'm on stage? And all of these things are incredibly important. but it's only one thing. And what we need to do is to bring all of that together. And story has a place in that. So I see story as two things. The first one is how you tell a story. And that's incredibly powerful because of what we've just said. From right back around the cave, when we're sitting beside caves, we've drawn people closer to the flames by, bringing them into the story, into that place, that shared moment together. And now we know from research that that's because our brains are syncing up. But I think there's an even more important storytelling function, and that is the structure that you use to tell all your information. Because when we think about it, I mean, Brené Brown says data is a story is data with a soul. So what we're doing when we're communicating is always giving a business case. We're creating an argument to take people on the journey. I see it like this. So come with me. And this is where we'll go to. So it's really important that we use a storytelling structure and we're taking people on that journey. Now, as you said, I write novels as well. So I do kind of fiction storytelling and factual storytelling. So in business storytelling, it's not the same. So we're not looking for, and then there was the crisis and then there was, the hero's journey. But it is but it's still a journey that you're taking people on. And it's like, I hate to use this because it's so not a good analogy, but when you're eating peanuts and you can't stop eating them, like it's very Moorish. When you give your information in a framework that works with the way people's brains take in information, it's very powerful. And the thing that you mentioned earlier, Em, about what is communication? I talked about one aspect, connection, and you talked about the next one, clarity. What you want in communication is both logical and emotional clarity. And this storytelling mode, this structure that you deliver, I don't love the word deliver, but you kind of invite people into your world, is really powerful to create all of those things when you are moving people from one place to another place. I'm always thinking that when you're communicating, you are actually creating possibility in people. So what possibility do you want to create? And this storytelling process will do that.
Can you share a little tangible tip around that? Is it activating the senses if you were with me on that day, or just a little? No.
It's very, very, very much more kind of practical than that. So I'm going to tell you a little story. If your child was being bullied at school, now we all find that incredibly powerfully painful. Somebody we love is in trouble. And let's say the headmistress or the head gets you into the room and she says, look, we know we take this seriously and we have little Sally. We're going to look after her. We're going to give her a swatch watch so that she can press the button. If she feels like she's being bullied, we'll have the anti-bullying team there. We'll give her a buddy so that she can talk through her things. I'm going to get her a maths tutor so she can really improve her maths. We take this very seriously. We're going to make a difference because Sally's important and her whole life her learning is based on, the adult she becomes is based on who she is now. And we sit in that room, we go, that's amazing. They're really on it. We love this school. But what they've done is they've gone straight to their solution. Now, their solution is powerful and we're happy with that. But they've actually spoken about them, not about us. And remember I said earlier that the principle number one is communication is about them, not about us. So you want to talk about your audience first. So you start with the problem and then you go to the solution. All of us want to go to what we're doing about stuff. It's not where we start. We start with what is the problem? What is the why? And so now I'm going to retell that story. So, the headmistress gets you into the class, into her room, into her office, and she says, we see that Sally is really struggling. She is often crying at school. We notice that she's actually not making it to school some days, and her maths have gone from A to D. This isn't good enough, and that's why we've put so much into creating a real response to support Sally. And what we've done is, and then she gives you, her solution, and that is far more powerful than if you go in and just talk at people. This is what we're doing. You start with where they are, you start with the problem. So there's a lot more to it, but that is the basic backbone of your storytelling structure. What is the problem I'm solving, and what is the solution? What is our response to that? And then you get a lot of buy-in because you've started with the emotion of it. And then you've taken to what you're going to do about it. So why, then what? Which is a short way of saying that. And that's very hard when you're in the media, because say a journalist comes to you and said, what are you going to do about this, blah, blah, blah. And you want to say, I'm going to do something. You take a beat and you take people on that journey. You start with where they are. So as a leader, you've really got to hold people on that journey. So you've got to resist the question they ask and say, what do I really need to give to these people? So you start in a different place than what you're expected. You start with where they are, and then you go to where you are.
My mind's going in 50 million miles an hour. So many things I want to ask you. Let me go to you being a foreign correspondent. I mean, before we even get to crisis communication, I mean, what was that like? I mean, take us into a young Erina when you were in that moment. You know, I remember my parents watching those shows when I was a kid and seeing, wow, to be that type of journalist. I mean, that takes a special type of person to put yourself in situations which are dangerous. And what, you know, talk to me about your own internal communication. Maybe if there was a time there, were you ever, I'm sure you would have been in a bit of danger at times. Have you got a story there for us?
Well, I did do, I did. The question is perfect for my experience of working in a really high stakes situation, high stakes communication situation. So I was covering the French nuclear testing in the Pacific. I was the South Pacific correspondent for the Australian ABC at the time. And usually no one in Australia is ever interested in the Pacific stories. Like, I had colleagues who were from all over the world and they were filing stories all the time. It was very hard to get people in Australia to be interested in the Pacific. But when this happened, it was a huge story in Australia. Like, it was the number one bulletin for 6 months, and then, you know, high in the stakes for a year. And so I was over in Papeete for the nuclear testing. And of course, the whole town erupted in rioting. And there was like 220 foreign journalists in that place. And only two of us, there was going to be a protest. They were going to go to the airport, and only two of us went, the guy from Reuters and me from the ABC. Everyone else was just, you know, having a good old time because they didn't actually expect that it would erupt at that moment. And what the protesters we were on the tarmac and they attacked the plane, and they had Molotov cocktails, and they were, you know, it was really, really intense. And I remember going, I'm just a girl from the bush. I'm a working class kid. I don't know what to do. And then I saw the Reuters guy. It was just as mobile phones were, we were the first to report with mobile phones. It was just as he picked up his mobile phone and thought, oh, that's what I do. So then I was off. So I was racing. And then there were times in that where that night, the whole town of Papeete went they burnt it. And a lot of people were I was a radio journalist, so you're on your own. In TV land, it's like a pool. So they have a camera. So they don't actually have to turn up to the difficult times. But as a radio journalist, you're on your own. Now, this town is burning. There are riot police, you know, it was frightening. I've never seen that. And, you know, they would jostle you out of the way. And it was like, oh, don't touch me. No one's actually ever done that to me in my life. So lots of confronting times. But I had to get back to my hotel to file. Now, it's dark and the place is burning. There are Molotov cocktails. There's people screaming, yelling. There's, you know, black-clad riot police fighting in the streets. And there are no cars. There's nothing. The whole place is still. You know, the cars are on fire. Anyway, through this mayhem with comes this one car, and all the protesters are banging on the car. And I think I have to get into that car. That's my only way out. So I just say to them, I've got to come in. There were four guys in the car, and they literally just opened the door and dragged me in as the car kept moving. Like things like that are incredibly powerful. Not at the time, like you're in adrenaline and you were just going. But now I think back and I think that was it was the adrenaline that charged the bravery, but you had to do it. That was the job. And then the next night, well, later that night, I was in where I used to, in a hotel, another hotel, and the whole thing went up as a burning ball of fire. And I just changed I just moved my things out of that hotel. And it was just, and everyone's exhausted, like it's been, 48 hours of rioting. And again, I had to go back through town and I had no transport. So I just they had scooters. I just went to one guy and my French wasn't very good, but I went to one guy after the other, said, will you take me back? And they all said no. And then one guy he didn't even say anything. He was like an angel. He just motioned to me to get on the back of his bike. And so we went back at 4 o'clock in the morning. There was this full moon to this burning town it was still at that point, like there was no fighting there. The fighting was all around the periphery. And I will never forget, it was like some kind of strange, kind of dark poetry to be given this gift of an angel to take me back because I couldn't have got, like it was miles away. So the connection that people felt in difficult situations was very profound. And that's a thing that I really took from that situation, the angels that you can find in your life, actually, to make a real difference. He was a leader in my life that really saved me that night. And he probably doesn't even remember. And I think that's the important thing about communication. There are so many times when we do things that actually we don't remember, but have incredible ripple effects in people's hearts and minds so that they do things differently. And that's what we need to hold when we're communicating as public communicators. That is the gift we give people. What are the seeds that may not be tomorrow, but maybe in a month, a year, 2 years' time?
Oh, and it's one thing AI can't replace. It's connection. It can't, it can provide you with a potential script around the words, which is sort of where we started with this episode, but it can't connect emotively with the audience on tone, on how you make someone feel. What are your thoughts there?
It can do a little bit. Like I feel that there's a lot of people reaching out to AI because they're lonely. And AI is incredibly powerful. And I've used it myself, 12 midnight, you've got this terrible thing you're looping out. Everyone else is asleep. I need some help with this. So I think it can do that. But what I have found is I was very excited with AI in the beginning. And I still use it as a tool, but I don't let it do my thinking. But I use it for curation and things like that, and finding me stuff. I use it. I use it as a leader would use a tool. However, I really feel, and it's exactly to the heart of what you're saying there, Emma. I really feel that AI is actually it smooths things out. It doesn't speak with it performs heart. And communication is never about performance. Communication is about responsibility and meaning. And I think that it's a real mistake to allow AI to do your communication. And in fact, I did in the beginning. I would say, I've got this really tough thing. This is what I want to achieve. How would you say this? And then I would use that to do it. I don't do that anymore because I recognize AI everywhere and it really disconnects me. That whole thing, it's not this, but it's that. And it's just if you haven't taken the time to speak to me, whoever's used the AI, I don't want to read what you've got because it's not meaningful to me. We're not making a real connection. You have taken a shortcut and got AI to do your thinking and your communicating for you. So I think I no longer think AI is a respectful way to communicate. Sure, use it as a tool, but don't make it be you. You've got to be you. You've got to find the way that you can say, do the deep thinking, do the challenge, and actually then communicate it. I think it's turning people off now. Yeah, certainly has turned me off. I'm so aware of when it's AI. And when you're on LinkedIn and you're looking at all this amazing stuff, if it's AI, even if it's good stuff, I find it hard to go through the dross of that kind of smoothness, that kind of it's a bit like once I was working with a guy, he'd been a radio guy, and he was so smooth. And it wasn't great communication, because we lost trust in him because he wasn't being human. He was being, deep down, we really need it's the connection is not through the words that we use. The connection is through our humanness, one to the other. This kind of magic that happens in our brains. The way I teach people to communicate is to use frameworks in which our brains take on information, and still AI does not do that yet. It may one day, but it will never, okay, I won't say that, but at the moment, I don't rate it as a high tool for communication. I do rate it for many other things. As a tool for me to get stuff done, I really rate that. Yeah.
All right. In 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what makes a great
too
coach?
Tough, Em. I can tell it's too tough already. What did you say?
I said in 1 to a maximum of 3 words, what do you think makes a great coach?
I think you are a great coach. I'm going to say the words that I know that you bring. It's empathy, it's inspiration, it's intelligence. You have to be, I'm saying that was my 3 words, but you have to be so intelligent to deeply intuit what that person needs from you in that moment. And then you've got to kind of inspire them to be part of their own journey, to really see that they can make a difference in the world and to own that difference. To me, that's all the things that I see in you. And it's the same as I would say for a communicator, the power of making a difference in the world, of making a communicator is about creating meaning, not just showing up. Showing up is the first thing. Show up and then actually help people make a difference in the world.
It's a responsibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
As you said. Love that. All right. So let's land this episode talking about crisis communication. Somebody's in a crisis, something we've never really spoke about on this episode before, because we're always talking like we've got lots of time to think through things. And but let's say a leader's in a crisis and they need to communicate their version of what they think needs to happen. Again, the solution. Is the approach pretty much along the lines of what we've spoke about this whole episode, or is it different?
It's completely different because the world is different. As you said, where there's a world with time, people aren't heightened. So we have a different way of communicating and connecting. In a crisis, everyone is heightened. Like, time is of the essence. The journalists are going, I've got to get the story. I've got to find out what's happened. There's people who've been affected, are really in a crisis within themselves. And the people that are responsible or part of the world that has created the crisis, they're really frightened. So there's a lot of fear, a lot of heat. We do things differently in a crisis. So the first thing I would Crisis 101, the golden rule is never, you want to do things to avoid being in a crisis. So crisis is really issues management. Do the work so that you will never be in a crisis. But there are still times, like that we do the work, and there's still times when we find ourselves in situations that we couldn't have foreseen, but that is the nature of a crisis. Run your scenarios and please be prepared, because if you're prepared, you're more likely. In fact, the research shows us that. If you have a crisis plan, even if you never pick up that plan, you will be far more successful than if you just go, what are we going to do in this situation? So please do your planning. That is the most important thing. And then when you get into a crisis, the simplest thing is it's very human. We're all, as I said, there's heat, there's fear, and there is real fear. I mean, most companies do not recover from a crisis because they haven't done the work. So my colleague who works with me in Red River, strategic communication, actually was the first person in Australia to do his PhD on what works in Australia and New Zealand. Before then, we were using US case studies, which actually weren't applicable when we found out through his research. It's very human. If you have a car accident, somebody bashes into you behind and they get out and the woman says, I am so sorry. The kids and there was so much. I've just had this incredibly difficult day. You're more likely to go, oh, that's okay. Let's work this out. It brings the heat down. An apology brings the heat down. We're so frightened. But if someone gets out of that car and just goes, what are you doing? You stopped. And it builds the heat. It builds the crisis. So our job as leaders is to take the heat out of a crisis. And I remember a beautiful thing that Shell said in a very difficult, it was a terrible situation. There was an oil spill. And of course, that is monumental crisis for the environment. And they said, at this early stage, we don't know who's responsible, but we feel responsible. And from that moment, people go, oh, they're not trying to dodge and hide. They're stepping up. They're being leaders. They're trying to take responsibility. So that is the first thing. And we do need, people don't want to apologize because they say, well, that means we're liable. We will have to compensate people. That's not the research. Apologize in a way that is heartfelt and real. Step up and be leaders in that situation. There's a whole lot more, but that's just a little
snapshot.
A little flame for how to actually bring the heat out of something.
I love it. It's simple and be human. Yeah. And
always communication is about how do we connect in a clear, deep way, logical clarity, emotional clarity.
Because there is so much research to say when people are human, then as you said, it's the way that our brain takes in somebody else's information. So Erina, what a joy, with connection, clarity, with responsibility and meaning. It's important as leaders, we ask, what difference can I make?
And what value can I bring? What gift can I leave these people with?
Love it.
And that is not just on a stage. It's not just in the media. It's every day at work, in the workplace. How do I make my people's lives easier, save them time, give them more satisfaction?
Stay in the data with a soul, with empathy, inspiration, intelligence, and have a plan, team. Have a plan, have a backup plan in case you ever need it. Honestly, this episode could have gone another hour and a half. Shout out to the Power Coaching Girls and, of course, the Warrior Women gang that Erin and I are a part of. Dita, go get it, girl, and all our fantastic Open Door Coaching alumni girls who we adore. And Erina, keep being amazing. You're one of a kind. I will always pick up the phone and you will always be there for me as well. Anytime to connect and communicate together because, we have something really special. So thanks for being on the show.
It's been such a heart-deep pleasure for me, and not just in this moment, but as all the moments we've shared together. And I love that you reached out to the people who hold us, because you and I we do have a lot of people in common that hold us professionally. And without that communication, that connection, we are lesser for it. So thank you for the richness you bring to my life, but to all your tribe as well. I can speak for all of us. Your podcast really does make a difference in the world.
Well, it's very human, that's for sure.
It's very
And these days, you know what's funny, Erina? I tend to leave in my mistakes. You know, I
yeah.
used to edit out all of my ums, or if I'm going down a
Oh,
certain path and change direction, it shows the humility in being human.
it's not just that. So people come to me all the time and they say, "Oh, I want to get rid of my ums." I say, "Don't get rid of your ums." Like if there's too many, we will work on it. Like if that's all that you're talking about. People need the ums because it gives their brain, while you're catching up, it gives their brain a catch up. So it's actually that humanness. The way people's brains work to take in information is we need the pauses. So yeah, go the ums. That's what I say. Be human.
Be human, and thank you, everyone, as always, for listening.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. That's the number 4. If you or your company are interested in sponsoring the Coaching Podcast, reach out to info@emmadoyle.com.au.